Hello and welcome to a video edition of Music in Widescreen. Today, I have for you the very talented Guy Manning to talk about the new album, which is called In Flight. Guy, thanks for spending a little time with us.
My pleasure, of course, as always, to speak to you.
Okay, well, it's I've had a long history, a lot of members of the band, and so this is a real pleasure for me. So the first question I have to ask you is, let's get the proper pronunciation of the band.
Right. Well, and now that's a very emotive
Okay.
point because when I created the name of the band using Dan, myself, and Marek's name, I called it Damanek.
Right.
But if you ask Sean, he'll call it Damanek.
Right. Okay.
But I always thought it should be Damanek.
Right.
But I don't care. Buy it. You can call it what you like.
Okay, because I've always heard Damanek because we had met up with you at Summer's End, and that's what you said it was. And I have heard people pronounce it both ways, so I just thought I'd clear that up.
Well, yes, to me, it's always Damanek.
Okay, that sounds good. I was very impressed with the first album. We gave it Best UK Album of the Year last year.
Well, no, that was unexpected and most gratifying. I have to say, I was quite embarrassed, really, but I thought I quite liked it. I have to say,
I think the album was very great. It was great, and so I was a little bit worried about the second album. I always worry about this.
You were worried about it. You were worried about the second album.
Well, I because we have a relationship too, I'm always like, oh, geez, I hope I like it. Not that you would ever hold it against me, but I just a wonderful job on this album. And I have actually a couple of notes let's talk about how what was the writing process like? And did it vary from the first album much?
No, not really. I had a lot of material left over from album one, and some of it has been rejigged for In Flight.
Right.
I only write. You know me from years past. I write what I write. And it comes out the way it comes out. I don't tend to write to order. I just sort of decide on the day what it's going to sound like, and if all the tracks come together well and they all sound of a similar quality and flavor, then I've done a good job. But there's plenty of songs that you haven't heard which reside in a folder called crap on my hard disk, because there are quite a few numbers that don't make it to the cut. Now, not to say that I might not go back and revisit them at some point, but some of the as you're writing them, some of them take on a life of their own and some of them don't.
Right.
And for this particular one, I mean, the thing about this album was Big Eastern. I wanted to do Big Eastern. It's at least half the album, really.
It is 30 minutes long here.
Yeah, it's a monster. You really need little matchsticks to keep your eyes open while you're listening to it. But it is quite an intense thing, and I always knew I wanted to do that piece. And I had a few other pieces supporting it around, like Moon Capture, which was Heaven Song Part 2, which was the accompanying part to the cosmic score from On Track. Song's really about me just looking into the night sky and getting some strange ideas, really.
Okay.
And so there was a few songs that were already earmarked for it. I just needed to find some others, and I think I was quite happy with the writing process, and the tunes came quite quickly, really. Wonderful. Those were, of course, the original demos.
Right.
By the time we've gone through the process of recording it, and certainly getting Sean's input on it, Timms' input, I should say, give me film. By the time Sean had finished with it, and it had batted backwards and forwards between himself and I, they also became something else. What you hear now is definitely a marriage between the two of us of how we wanted the thing to sound in the end. And I think it's for me, it's been a very fruitful partnership working with Sean. And I think he definitely brings out a lot of strengths in what I do, and hopefully my ideas stimulate something in him which he wouldn't get otherwise. So it's been very gratifying working with Sean, and I hope we can continue to do that. So the writing process, to a very long-winded answer, was quite straightforward. Really, there was nothing stressful or pressured about it. Really.
Right, and so you're the primary composer and then you bring the ideas, and then Sean and maybe others will put in some work on the writing, or is anybody else come with writing with songs?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most of the songs haven't strayed too far from my original demos, other than in arrangement, embellishment, and programming from Sean.
Right.
And stripping back things. So, for example, when I'm looking at parts for Marek,
right,
I'll write sort of crappy sax parts on the keyboards. Right. And know that when he strips them off, he's going to play them much better. But I like to give them sort of notes as to what I was thinking about at the time and the sort of feel of the solo or the ensemble part. So all these parts are put on, and then one by one they're taken off. Right. And Sean will replace keyboards with, and leave some of the keyboards. A good portion of the keyboards on the album are still me. But there's a lot of the more what I call the more complicated and dexterous parts are played by Sean, because he's a much better keyboard player than I'll ever be. So, and I can think about guitar parts, but I certainly couldn't play them like Luke, Antonio, and Jean.
Right.
So, and the bass parts, again, I can write them and work with Dan, and we worked closely. Dan came up to the house and we worked on the bass parts. Right. But in the end, he still makes them his own, Right. And Marek's arrangements for the woodwind and then sax parts are just phenomenal. He always sends me, whole sections of, harmonizing saxophones and things to work with. So it's easy for me. All I've got to do is write a decent tune, a decent set of lyrics, get a sort of a beat going, and everything else takes care of itself when I've worked with the other guys. So
right. So what are you left with to play on the album? Did you play some keyboards and some and some guitar?
Guitar, I mean, mainly it's not electric guitar for me. It's acoustic guitar mainly. A lot of what I'd call the ancillary arrangements, the strings, mellotrons, bits of organ, piano. There's lots of me on there, to be honest. But there's no point in picking through it and saying who's what.
Right.
If it sounds like a brilliant solo, it's probably Sean.
Well,
But I do a lot of what I call the texture work.
Right. Right, the polyphonic, making layered portions of it.
That's right, things that are going on in the background, and bits and pieces.
Right.
And also, I've got an idea for the drum rhythms and the bass parts and everything. So it comes from me and then gets matured by everybody else.
So it's kind of an odd menagerie of people when I think about it. So Luke and you, I could see, crossing the same paths. Both ex-Tangent members, even, and
Dan, of course, is an ex-Tangent member as well.
Oh yeah, and Dan, and I forgot about Dan being in the band too. And but what about, is Marek German? I've seen him play only in Russelsheim. So is he from Germany? And of course, Sean from Australia. And how does this all come together? Is it, without getting into the minutia of it? I mean, is it an interesting story?
Each partnership's come with a story. I mean, with Marek, I was introduced to Marek by Sean Gordon of Prog Rock Records.
Oh yeah, previous owner of ProgRock.com, actually.
Yeah, and I was looking for a saxophone player.
Oh, okay.
To play on the Manning album.
Yeah.
I think it was Ancestry, and I needed a good saxophone player. And Sean said, "I know this guy that I've done some work with called Marek. He's very good." And he introduced me, and I couldn't work out whether he was going to be any good. When you're dealing with somebody you've never worked with before, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. I mean, somebody bigs somebody up and said, "Oh, I met the most brilliant player," and then you get something and it sounds pretty awful, sounds like a strangled cat, and you're trying to work out how to let this person down. So what I did with Marek was, because I didn't know him, and we were introduced, as I say, through Sean, I had this idea for a song on Ancestry called "Night at the Savoy." And I wanted a sort of a clarinet in the style of Benny Goodman. It was a jazz club, so I needed a sort of jazzy clarinet. So I thought, well, if I give him that piece to play, let's see how he does.
Right.
So I gave him that part, and back came this most brilliant clarinet part. After that, I packaged up all the rest of the album and sent it across and said, "Do what you like with these." and he sent back a lot of really brilliant arrangement, and some of it always ends up on the cutting room floor.
Right.
But a lot of it is in there. So that's how I got to work with Marek. And Marek's been with me ever since, really, playing on the Manning albums. And then when Mark and I had got together to do UPF,
right,
I knew that we needed a good saxophone player. Again, I asked Marek if he wanted to help out, and I also asked Dan if he wanted to help out because I knew Dan from Tangent Days and stuff.
Right. And
so UPF became, Marek, Dan, and I were in UPF along with Mark and then the guys from Australia.
Right.
So that's how I met with them. Okay. How I met up with Sean was obviously through Unitopia coming to England in 2010 to play Summer's End. Okay. And I'd been a sort of mutual fan. We'd had some, traffic backwards and forwards between Mark and I, and Sean and I met them. I thought they were great guys in 2010, and we got on really, really well. So after UPF sort of didn't need me anymore for the time being, and I'll be back with UPF for the next album, I think. Okay. But not this one. But I needed a good keyboard player for I'm saying Damanek now. for Damanek, and thought of Sean immediately because he's a great player, and I didn't know whether he'd do it.
Right.
But he said yes, much to my delight, and that's really so. All these people come together through odd encounters, and right. It's an interesting thing.
I'll tell you what, that 2010 Summer's End was a real networking experience for me, which I didn't realize at the time, because of course the Unitopia was there, which is actually why my wife and I flew there, was to see them. Fido. You were in the audience. I don't think you were playing that weekend. You had just released Charleston.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I remember.
And
Fido was on.
And Fido was there. And Fido said on stage, "I was just listening to this Charleston album. It's quite good." And then from the darkness comes Guy Manning going, "Thank you."
Yeah.
You remember
I was
that?
Up on the balcony.
Yeah. Oh, is that where you were? Okay.
On the balcony. I filmed the whole of Fido's set.
Oh, really? Oh,
I've got it on video. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so and then you and Fido probably came up with a friendship, and then you guys did a small tour as well. In London at least.
That's right. And Fido's appeared twice on albums. He was the voice of the impresario.
Right.
Night at the Boy. Tree. And he came and he sang on Dark Sun from the last Damanek album.
Right. So, yeah. So that's it's interesting to hear in 2010 what a great show that was, and how you guys kind of got together actually.
Yeah. And there was a lot of incestuous. No, I'll change that. I won't say incestuous. There was a lot of. You're right. Networking is probably the best way of putting it. Really. Yeah. We made some good friendships, which I'm happy to say have lasted, lasted through the years. And Fido and I are still on very, very good terms, and we chat regularly.
Right.
And I was just telling him how good I thought Infernal was the other day.
Right.
So
it's a wonderful album.
So we had a long conversation about that album.
Yeah. Well, let's. So, let me get it back on track, as it were.
Nice. I see what you did there. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I hear Skyboat, I hear these amazing backup singers. How did that come together? What is that? And do you know what I'm talking about? Or
you mean the choir in the background?
The choir, yeah. So tell me a little bit about this choir, because it's really outstanding.
There was a couple of songs on In Flight where I'd always heard it being quite soulful and gospelly. And I said to Sean, I want a gospel choir on this.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'll see where I can find. And he found in Adelaide a group called the Gospel Collective and Jones Commentary.
Okay.
And they are a big gospel choir. Now, all of them didn't come to the studio. We had about 6 arrive at the studio.
Right.
And they were very happy to just play on the album. I think Sean's offered them some little studio time as a reward for that. Oh. But they were happy to sing, and they sang on Skyboat, which made me very happy. And they also sang on Big Eastern Part 2, which helped me a lot. I just thought it needed that. I heard it, and I just thought it needed it. And it's the first time I've ever tried to do that and it worked out very well, and
No,
you know,
it's,
quite
it's
happy to
definitely
put
a
them on
highlight.
things.
It's probably
Yeah.
probably the highlight of the non-epic songs, I think. Anyway.
Big Eastern Tooth, yeah, it's very. I think it's quite soulful, that section. The whole part 2 is quite a soulful thing.
It is. It is actually. That's the part that really hooked me. So was there, so I have the pre-release copy. The epic is in 3 parts. Was there kind of a back and forth that we make this 1 or 3 tracks, or was it just the way it
No, it was always going to be one long thing split into 3 parts.
Okay.
I wrote it as a 3-part suite, and that's how it ended up. There was a little trimming here and there, but in essence, it hasn't changed that much in terms of its length and composition since that. But having said that, I had this, I wanted it to open like a Chinese percussion solo. I heard a sort of Stomyu Yamashita opening, with just percussion. Right. And I did something on the demo, and I said, Sean, it goes a bit like this, and he took it and added so much more to that powerful opening, So he takes my ideas and extends them, and he's got a lot more libraries and samples and recourse to people than I have. So he would take those ideas, and I'd write a melody, and he'd maybe come up with a counter melody to play on the synthesizer. So what you're hearing some of the times is my original synthesizer melody followed by a counter melody that he's added. Okay. So and we've panned them left and right and things like that to make them sound, good in the headphones when you're lying on the carpet with your lava lamp on in the dark. Nice. So there was a lot of toing and froing with it, but the basic composition, lyrics, up and down tempos, tunefulness, and arrangement hasn't changed tremendously from the original demos, other than being made much better by better instrumentation and additional programming bits and pieces to really make them sound quite unique in places, I think, quite big.
Right. So I've been kind of jumping around, but you want to talk about the story that goes on with this album? Is there a concept going on? I haven't been able to pick that out yet. I just know we started in Ragusa here, which might be not fictional. It might be the city in Sicily. I'm not quite sure.
Well, okay. Ragusa is the old name for Dubrovnik.
Okay.
It's a city which, although has retained some of its romantic beauty, has been heavily industrialized. And the viewpoint of Ragusa is told by an old man walking through the streets, remembering the beautiful romantic city of his youth, and wishing he was back there at that time before, factories and shipping yards and everything opened up. Gotcha. So Ragusa is an homage back in time to a romanticized view of an old East European city.
Okay, gotcha. As we're talking, I hear a lot of similar, when I think about the lyrics and the thought process, I hear that from Andy Tillison too. Do you feel like you have a kind of a similar, maybe lyrical style as him, poetic style as him? And you think that has anything to do with working together, or did you have that? And if you do think it's similar, do you think it's did you feel it was similar before you worked with him, or?
Are you asking whether it's chicken and the egg?
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, I think Andy's lyric writing can be very romantic, but he's far more direct than I am.
Okay.
I tend to wax lyrical in very poetic style, whereas Andy will cut to the chase. If he thinks he needs an expletive to get it across the line, he will. Because he's interested in the message. I'm interested in the message too, but we have a different way of drawing the listener in, I think.
Okay.
But we did work together for a long time, and obviously parts of of that relationship rubbed off on both of us, I would have thought. That's not to say that he needed me to become what he is, because I don't think he did.
No.
And vice versa.
Right.
But there was obviously some sort of common view on life, otherwise we wouldn't have worked together at all.
Right.
So while we were working, we found it easy to work together, and working apart is just as easy, but we still have remnants,
Right.
But I think the interesting thing is that over the years we've moved in opposite directions, really. I don't think the Tangent and Damanek sound the same at all now.
Right.
Whereas when we could have said at some point that the stuff I was doing and some stuff he was doing might have sounded similar, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think Damanek's got its own sound now, and I don't think it's easy to quantify what that is. In the same way, the Tangents now become its own entity. It has its own sound. You can recognise it when you hear it, and I think that's really good. So we've sort of separated from the hip over the years, but my admiration for his writing remains, and he's certainly for his playing. His keyboard playing is up there with the best.
Right.
In my opinion, he's up there with the best. He can compete with anybody on their own terms, as far as I'm concerned. Don't tell him I said so.
Well, he's been always very nice to us on the station, interviews and spending time with us when he was in Chicago and stuff. So always good to hear good things about Andy. But back to the album. Mooncatcher is a very sweet track, and what was the I was kind of curious what the impetus was for that. Where did that come from?
Well, again, as I say, I wrote a lot of these things at about the same time, or started embryonically writing them at the same time.
Okay.
And I'd written Cosmic Score, which was a song about seeing the stars in the sky as notes on a gigantic musical stage.
Right.
And the tune was keeping the earth in harmony.
Right.
And we were basically ruining the planet, and notes were going out of tune on it. And that was the idea. When it came to Mooncatcher, again, it was another sort of looking up at the sky at night and thinking how awesome it was to be standing under this big sky. And I got to thinking, as I was looking up, I was sort of looking at the moon, which happened to be particularly big that night. And I thought, well, if I lifted up my hand, I could put it up in the sky, and the moon would look like it was sitting in my hand.
Right.
And if the moon controls the tides and water on the earth,
right,
and I could manipulate the moon, I could manipulate all water and tides, and that includes us. Right. As Peter Hamill said, 4 pails of water and a bag full of salt, that's all we are.
Right.
And so if you could manipulate the moon, you could manipulate emotions of the people and humans underneath. And the Mooncatcher is this guy who can manipulate our emotions, and so the song is appealing to him to make love and desire for the person who's singing the song from the Mooncatcher.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, it's really, I think that's very insightful. I think it's a beautiful story, actually, and that's, I think maybe the reason I did compare you to Andy a bit is because I think that the lyrics are very thought-provoking. I think both of you guys are, including Fido, who we previously mentioned, I think are great poets first, and then great musicians and songwriters.
Well, thank you. That's nice to know that somebody's actually listening to the lyrics.
Yeah. Well, it's always the last thing I hear, but I definitely, listen to them as much as I.
Yeah. Well, you know how important they are to me.
Right.
I think the lyrics are tremendously important.
Right.
And that's why I print them on the album covers and hope people read them.
Right. Okay. Cool. Well, I think I'm going to wind it down here. We've been going for about 25 minutes, so. Anything else you'd like to say about the album before we wrap it up here?
What do you mean, apart from go buy it?
What's the release date? What's the best way for people to buy it so that you get more money in your pocket? Those are two things.
Well, it doesn't. Funnily enough, this time around, it doesn't really work like that. I mean, if I was selling it directly from my website and had my own copies of it,
right, then
I might be able to take a slight cut,
right,
artist privilege. However, with Damanek, it seemed easier to let GEP, the label, control the stock. Okay. So the easiest way to buy an album is to go to their GEP store online, where you can get not only the Damanek albums and IQ albums, but also Southern Empire albums.
Right.
And also More Than a Dream by Unitopia.
Okay. Right.
So, it's a good roster of artists, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
So that's the best way to go and get it. Or go to our website, and there's a link on there, which will take you straight through to the store.
And the release date?
5th of October, 2018.
Okay. Oh, just in time for Summer's End. Is that the plan?
Well, it was the schedule that GEP put to us, really.
Okay.
Haven't got Southern Empire, haven't got Civilization out, and that doing really well.
Okay.
They didn't want to, put it out too soon after that, so we waited a bit.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Guy, hey, thanks for so much for spending some time with us. It's always been a pleasure. I think we've seen you at Rozfest, Maltby, of course, here in the basement.
Yes, been around, haven't I?
I have to send you that, or we have to get those files out there, I think, or some good recordings there. And let's talk briefly to people listening. What is where? Tell us a little bit about the tour, where you're going to be, and just what countries and what date range.
Yeah, well, we start out in Germany, and then go to Verviers, Spirit of 66, and then travel to Zoetermeer. Those are the 3 European dates, and the bands for that tour will be 7 Steps to the Green Door, opening up, and then either
Damanek, who Marek Arnold is part of.
Yeah, that's Marek's main band, really. Mm-hmm. So Marek 7 Steps opens up, and either Southern Empire or Damanek will be on next, depending on what night it is. We're going to alternate it, so the band on last maybe gets another number on each night. And then we come back to the UK. We play 5 days in the UK, starting with Swindon, then Southampton, then Bilston, Robin 2 in Bilston, then back down to London, and finally we end up with a good old Maltby at the Arts Centre for the CRS on the 1st of December, the end of the tour, my local home gig.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to that one immensely.
Wonderful. Well, wonderful. All the best success on the tour and the sales, and we will hope we'll be featuring it on the first day, the first Sunday after, was October 7th. We'll be featuring it on our show, and thanks again, Guy, and we will talk to you sometime soon, I'm sure.
Good, most pleasure. My love to Rainer, and many success with the show, and thanks for having me on the show.